Down here, I'm in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, running on the beach. Just finished my run, and I wanted to talk a little bit about timelessness. If you could suspend beliefs for a minute and just listen to a story, you might get what I consider to be what religion's really about. So, in the beginning there was only God, and God was everything. And God has complete control of everything. And whether you're a religious person or scientific, there's a way to see that. It's either controlled because God is the all and you believe it based on faith, or there's control if you're a theoretical physicist. There is string theory, and then there's the unified equation, which one day theorists believe that all equations existing at macro and micro levels operate according to a unified theory that that one day they may be able to discover. And so if you suspend belief for a minute and believe that either God is acting according to his or her own rules, according to a unified equation, which is his or her value system, or whether you believe in a textbook kind of God that's been carried on for generations in your country or your family. There's this idea of a God who's all-powerful and has control of everything, or is the core unified equation that regulates the physical world and the spiritual world and consciousness itself, the way you think, everything. And so in the beginning there was only God, and since God has imaginative powers, because God is everything, God imagined the world into being, and including all of the scientists, including all the cells and the waveforms and the light and the matter. God imagined it into a being, or it occurred through evolution, whatever your path is to get through that part of the information. There's a path for you, depending on your belief system. And so, zoom ahead 1 billion or 100 billion or whatever your numbers are to today. And God is still everything. And we are, which means we are God. Not we are the open eye God that knows and sees and is everything, but we're composed of components imagined into existence by God or created over time, evolution, if that's your thing. We are of God. And so, but God doesn't end at our skin. God continues in all directions, infinitely. In fact, the concept of distance is also imagined into existence, just like time. Because without a start or an end or a center of the universe, there's no such thing as time or distance. All of that is of God. And so you are of God, and you're in this place. And what you are is, you are a point in the XYZ coordinate system of the all that God imagined into existence. And therefore you see God's creation from a singular point of view that no one else in the world sees. Maybe in a moment someone will be standing next to you, but they would describe the same thing they're seeing differently than you would. But that only happens for a moment. The rest of your lives, you're often in different spaces and you're imagining or seeing different things in God's creation. So we all have a different view of the universe. And that's not just true for us, it's true for all consciousness wherever it sits temporarily while it's living a lifespan imagined into existence by the unified equation or God or whatever you call your vision of how things are or why they are. And so there's a fundamental questions that humans wake up with because they've got a point of view that they've assembled over a lifetime about the religion they know, if they have any, about money, if they have any, about relationships, if they have any, and about the physical world around them, how to survive in it, which they do have because if they're presently alive and surviving. And because each one of those, we're talking about humans now, not the other animals, but because each one of those humans has a different XYZ coordinate for any time, or T1, T2, T3, and because they have experienced different things in different places, they have an order of analysis and reasoning that differs from one another, and they see the world differently. But they remember time, they remember things that have happened to them over time, and they use the past to make decisions about the future. And because a subset of information they've gathered, and they haven't even gathered at all, but what they did choose to gather at any given moment is also a subset of, so one subset is what they could have seen had they seen everything from that point of view at that moment. And then there's another subset of information that is what they decided to remember. And they may not even have decided to remember it. It may just have been so traumatic they remember it. But somehow a group of memories are used, and whenever we encounter every new T, we use our past to make judgments about the future. And so in that regard, we're kind of an archaic expression of the past, because not only do we filter our decisions based on what happened to us in the past, but because we're so busy filtering the present moment with regard to what happened in the past, as we get older, we see even less of what's actually happening, and we see more of what did happen. It'll help guide us, and we become more reactionary. Maybe when we're younger, we don't have as much history and frozen memory pictures to guide us, and so we may take a half a second or 2 seconds or 3 seconds to propel us to a new action. But as we get older, it happens faster and faster, and we live more in the past. And this is the standard human condition. And the reason there's pain in your life is because you've constructed a universe that you're making decisions based upon. And the pain occurs when the universe doesn't act like your model. So you approach life, a second happens, you observe the surrounding conditions for a very small amount of time. You measure that against your life, and you come up with an action. And it's not unusual for the results to be wrong or to be right. That happens based on every decision you make. You may not find it right away for each one, but the pain comes when you don't win. It can also happen when you win. Like when you win, but it hurts someone else after the fact. You realize you hurt someone and you might have some pain from that. But when you win, at first, if you're not thinking about others and you think of it as a win, it feels good, and that acknowledges your assembly of a constructed universe. It confirms your beliefs, and you attach me to it, or in your case you, and it's your identity, and you have this whole reactionary universe of things you like and don't like, and situations you want to find yourself in again, and those you want to stay away from, who the good people are and who the bad are, what the correct religion, economic system, political system. There's a you that has all this attached to it with regard to anything you care about. Some things you just don't care about. But the pain comes when you're wrong, because to you, you don't really believe in you don't really believe in all the information. In fact, you don't even have it cataloged. You didn't even see it all. You were so distracted by your analysis of what was happening as compared to the past. You can't even see everything that's happening in any given moment. And so pain arises, but you think you knew it all, and therefore you're angry because it doesn't make any sense. The world doesn't work that way. This should have happened, that should have happened. Why did she do this? Why did he do that? Why did it turn out this way? And it's normal. Nothing wrong with you. That's just what a human is. They're a point of view, they're a set of assumptions, and they're a set of reactions. And the older they get, often, the more reactive they are and less present, because they have more answers to more things. But pain still comes because they're not 100% right. They're lucky to be 95% right, actually. I don't know what the numbers are, but you get the idea. And so, but as another characteristic of humans, we don't really focus that much on the 95%. Maybe we do for 30 seconds, pat ourselves on the back. But the things we think about for days are the things that don't turn out like we project. When we take the action we think will work, and we get a reaction that doesn't make sense in our universe. And those are the ones we spend more time in analysis about, because those are the ones we kind of have to handle before we can say we have our life handled. If we could just get these 2-3 things in order, then our life would make sense. And so that's sort of an analysis of what it's like to be a human. And it's all taken from the point of view of the human mind, which is a XYZ coordinate for time t, and it's not actually the universe. But over in history, we have these characters that come along and talk about heaven on earth, or being awake, living in the present moment. And what they're pointing at if you look at my analysis, what they're talking about is that they're spending a higher percentage of their time, even as they age, in the XYZ t coordinate. Forgive me, not in the XYZ t coordinate. That's where they are in the universe at that given moment. But instead of briefly collecting data and then immediately reacting, they're more in a collective data space and less in a comparative space. They're more, I wouldn't even say data collective space. It's more like an observational space where they're living in the experience of living. And they're less in their head about that 5% of the problems they still haven't solved, or 2%, or 10, or 20, whatever your percentage is, however you perceive it. They're less judging themselves and other people, and they're more living in the experience of their life. And we have spiritual leaders over the centuries that have talked about this and been there, and they point at it. What does it mean to be? Does it mean you're ignoring yourself? Like you don't care about yourself anymore? Does it mean how do you leave the XYZT position in your life and experience it longer? Or said another way, you're still in the XYZT coordinate spot at this moment in your life. But how do you live joyfully in the experience of living itself and spend less time, be more like a kid, if you will, less time in the analysis because maybe you have the tools now as an adult, but you found that you can be joyful when you're more like a child. If you will, if you live in the innocence of experience, I propose to you, because you're not wound up in the analysis that what your mind thinks is important by sifting through the data, deciding what's important, comparing to the path, coming up with an action, judging yourself and others for not meeting your expectations, and living more in your life, you're actually living in the God space. Because remember, before it all happened, there was only God, there was only consciousness. And if you can live in that original space, I'm not saying throw away, you can't get rid of your XYZT, because that's really the only reason you get to have a chip on the board, is because you've been imagined into existence by theory or God's will or the unified equation or evolution, whatever you want to call it. You're here, you have a beginning and an end, and in the meantime you can live joyfully by being with God, if you will, or you can live more in your own XYZT. Again, no matter what you do, you're going to be in the XYZT until you die. You can't give that up. But what you can begin to notice is that you're thinking your way through life. Begin to notice that you're not experiencing a tree. There's all these beautiful palm trees around me, and it's easier for me to experience the palm trees and the coconuts and the birds chirping and the people all going about their day when I'm present to my perception, my unjudgmental, unconclusive, unanalyzed action-taking, pure perception. And what I've learned over the years, this happened to me the first time when I was, I think, 21. What I've learned over the years is that by living in experience, the wind on your skin, the sounds around you, the colors, the breath, by living in the experience of living itself, and being less interested in the analysis. What surprised me about it is not only that I'm living more joyfully, but what really surprised me about it is I make better decisions. And if we back up for a minute and think about what I said earlier, that when we begin to only take a small percentage of the experience around us and crunch it into the past and figure out what to do next, are we living? You could say we're living because we're living in the past. We could call the past like a tree or a bird or but I haven't found that to be the case. In other words, the act of analyzing is a crunching sort of act. It's kind of a grind. And the experience of living is kind of a calming, mellow appreciation. It's an appreciation for beauty around you. Because no matter where you are in the world, at any XYZT, which you cannot leave until you die, there's some form of beauty. It's somewhere. And if you live present to that, rather than your analysis of the other 5% that you need to fix before you can enjoy life, the other 5% handles itself. How could that be? How could... Wow, that's a loud bird. I don't see him though. Must be in an apartment in someone's cage. How could it be that by being present and not so interested in your analysis, that problems solve themselves? How could that even be true? It doesn't make any sense, because you spent this whole life analyzing, figuring out what's important, coming up with a rule set, and suddenly that's not as good as just walking around experiencing. Does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense at first. So you'll have to experience this. You have to try it. And what you might find, and what I found, is that I can't stop my mind from thinking. When it wants to think, it thinks. But when I open up my experience of the world, and I have, if you will, a peripheral vision of everything, and I don't find my mind so interesting, now it's going to think, but if I don't find it so interesting that I pay all of my attention to it, if I just let it jibber jabber as I walk and experience beauty, and I'm not even letting it really, it's almost like it does its thing. But remember, it's all in the creation that you're perceiving. It's just like, and so what that means to me is that somehow that information is sort of peripherally put into the equation while I continue to experience the all. So I live in the all, and I have a little chip, 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 bip, 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 kind of going off in the background, giving its 2 cents, giving me a focus of, well, remember this happened, oh, and what about that? And you could try this. But if I only give it, if I don't jump completely into it like it's right and identify with it and turn off all the other sources of experience around me, first of all, my temperature is much lower, right? Because when you're fully engulfed in your own interestingness, and every statement you make to yourself, you're like, yeah, that's right. You're turning everything off. You're not present to the all. And what is the all? It's that quiet, peaceful, joyful God that predates the all. Or not the all, but predates everything imagined into existence. And second, my mind is my mind is being listened to just at a lower temperature. And so it goes into the analysis. And when a decision's made, it's more passively, like it just sort of naturally happens. It's not a moment where I put it on a list and say, I'm going to do this today. Although there's nothing wrong with that if you like making lists. It's just life kind of flows. And it's even more productive because instead of spending whatever that is, 70, 80, 90% of my time filtering and cutting away all experience to identify the one or two that I'm deeming relevant at any given moment and focus only on that and be comparing it to the past and being absent from the joy of living while my mind grinds away at all this crap, I'm allowing that to happen sort of quietly to my right while I'm fully absorbed in the all. And it's part of the all. And so my temperature drops. It's included in the analysis. Decisions are made, I flow through life, and problems solve themselves. Now that's not a methodology I'm giving you. It's something you have to try out and see if it works for you. And to do it, you have to allow yourself to be in the space of experiencing your life with a greater peripheral vision while you allow your mind to do what it does. And that, my friends, I think is my scientific analysis of what Buddha was talking about, or Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now, or Jesus, Life on Earth, when he talks about the Father and him being the Son. We're all sons of God in that way. I'm not denying or anything else they teach about Jesus. I'm just interpreting it in terms of the same analysis I have. And so I think this is it's sort of my way of reconciling my own experience with modern or ancient philosophy, science, and my life. So anyway, thanks for listening. Dan here, Vagabond Buddha. Come get a free copy of my ebook, I Am Happy, an Owner's Manual for the Human Mind. And don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. Thanks for listening. This is Dan of Vagabond Buddha.